going to answer a lot of the questions that you guys asked because I am living with Alzheimer's. I drove myself here. I make my own decisions and am fully capable. My insurance has not cut any of my services or anything like that post my diagnosis. But I'll get to that later. It really does help to have a caretaker who can be aware of what you're going through and help you quantify. To answer the question about how do you judge what stage you're at, it is all about the people who know you. When I go to a neurologist, they say to me, how do you feel? What's going on? What's going on? And then they look at her and they say, is what he is saying accurate? Is that true? And so it's very important to have someone like that you can trust. But in any event, I jumped ahead. My name is Terwilliger. I was diagnosed just over a year ago with Alzheimer's. I had a TIA in 2018. I started noticing issues of brain fog and a little bit of a slowdown in what I was able to do intellectually. And so I thought, okay, there's a lasting problem, is what I thought. But I advocated for myself to get, I didn't know what it was at that point, but I wanted a baseline neuropsych exam, basically to have a knowledge of where I was at intellectually after the TIA. It took me 4 years to get a doctor to give me that exam. I was living in rural Virginia at the time, and I'm still articulate, well-spoken, and smart, right? So I would go to a doctor and they go, something's not right. I'm not as quick as I used to be, and they're going, you're damn quick. Like, we don't see anything. We can't justify sending you to a neurologist for that. So I didn't get to go to a neurologist, and eventually I sort of gave up on the idea until I moved back to Massachusetts. And I found a primary care doctor who listened to what I had to say and said, okay, we'll send you to one of our social workers, and she'll issue you what's called a MOCA test. It's that, 20-question test, the one that Donald Trump famously took a couple of years ago. It includes the 5 words, right? And I didn't get a single one of the 5 words right. I got everything else. Like, I could tell an elephant from a rhinoceros, I could draw a clock, I could do all of those things. I couldn't remember a single one of the 5 words that was said to me 20 seconds after they were said, right? So that was enough to get me a 25 on a score of 0 to 30, where 26 is the cutoff for whether you get to go to a neurologist or not. Right? So I got to 25 and I got to a neurologist who listened to what I had to say and said, okay, we'll do the tests. And so the tests at that point were blood work to see if I had a thyroid issue, because that can also cause levels of confusion and memory loss. An MRI to determine I didn't have lasting brain issues due to the stroke. And finally, the PET scan, because the blood test didn't exist at that point. But I went in for the PET scan, and the PET scan did show that I had a substantial buildup of amyloid plaque. And so I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at that point, which truly was the worst day I've ever had in my entire life. Like, when what you have in your life is being smart and funny and quick. I've never been an athlete. My body hasn't been what's driven me, right? I've always said, take an arm. It's fine. As long as I can still listen to music, I'll be okay, right? And so learning that I would eventually lose the thing that was me to me was absolutely devastating, right? And my wife and I went into a pretty big depressed bit of time, right? You don't recover from that easily. Forgetting about the hoops that I had to jump through with insurance, to find care, right? The Alzheimer's Association was one of the first places that I called. We spoke to one of their social workers who sent me a sheaf of, here's the stuff you need to know documents, which, to be honest, I haven't even looked at yet, right? Because it's overwhelming. I'm fine now, I really am. I just want to lay that out straight out. It's been a year and I'm in better shape than I have ever been in my entire life. Because, A, I'm on the Leqembi drug, right, which is slowing the progression down. It's not enough for me to slow the progression down, right? I want a cure. I want to not have this disease anymore. Because whatever you say about how people can exist, I exist just fine. I'm good. I feel good. Like I said, I'm in better shape than I've ever been in my entire life, mentally and physically. But I have the specter of this terrible death hanging over me at all times. And I spend most of my time not worrying about it anymore, but I spend months, and I'm going to tell you all about my blog later, and you'll be able to read about it if you want to. I spent months worrying about my death, because what I don't want, and a lot of people are fine with, right? So there's scales of, right, what do I want versus what somebody else wants, and they don't intersect, and that's fine. But I want to be able to say at some point, and this is not official Alzheimer's Association doctrine here, but it's my own personal feeling and it needs to be said. I want to be able to say, when I'm ready, I don't want to be alive anymore. I don't want to go through that loss of self that is inevitable, no matter what I do, right? And that is not legal. Even if medical aid in dying is passed in Massachusetts and it's on the docket right now, it still won't cover people with dementia. Because at that point, we're not terminal, really. We can live for years in that state. We don't have just but 6 months to live, which is the cutoff point for being terminal. So something's got to be done, and I'll be done with that, because that's really not the point of what's going on. Point being, I'm taking the Leqembi. The Leqembi gives me 30% slow down of a progression that we do not, as the question was asked earlier, we do not know what progressions are. I spent the first 8 months of going to my neurologist going, so is there any way to judge what's going on? Can I get another PET scan? Can I get another cognitive test? Can I get this, that, or the other thing? And he basically said, no, there's nothing that we can say or do or that can be done to quantify how fast you're going to progress. Wendy can quantify it for me, and hopefully she would agree with you in that my mental capacity of a year ago has been eclipsed by my mental capacity now, because not only do I do the Leqembi, which isn't helping with that, theoretically, but I'm also doing all sorts of clinical trials. I'm doing sensory stimulation. I'm doing 40 hertz therapies. I'm taking lion's mane mushrooms. I'm writing all the time. I'm talking all the time. I'm out and about. I'm reading. I'm doing word games. I'm exercising my brain. I'm not good enough about exercising my body yet, because I really don't like to go to the gym. I'll go out and go hiking or whatever, but I really don't like to go to the gym. But I've got to do that, right? Because I know that that's part of it. But the point being is there are things you can do. All of those things about staying healthy. I eat a quarter of the meat that I used to eat. I eat almost no processed foods at all. And I feel good. Can I say 100% this is what is helping me? No, I can't do that. All I can say is there's not a thing that I'm doing that I would stop for fear of it being the thing that is helping me, right? So I still go every 2 weeks and I get my infusion. You can look at my bruises. I'm covered with bruises and needle marks, and it's nothing that I ever thought was going to be my life, but it is.
How far do you go? Do you go to Bay State?
I go to Bay State, yeah. And I've had 24 infusions so far. So that's my how long have I known? Because I got diagnosed in early July, and it took till September to actually get in for the infusion. And I will say this, my insurance, which I get through the marketplace, pays for everything. I haven't spent a dime except for the cost of MRIs and PET scans. So that's really good. And I'm really worried about that, right?
Right. Now you have to get MRI so often because of the chance of blood clots.
Yeah, so the Leqembi and the other drug both offer the potential for brain hemorrhages. And so in the first 6 months of your taking these drugs, you go for MRIs very frequently. I had 4 MRIs in 6 months to determine that I wasn't bleeding. And since I'm now no longer required to get them. But they don't, as Megan said at one point, they don't tell if you're getting better, right? They don't look at that sort of stuff for you, and that's too bad. And I asked my neurologist, and this kind of relates back to the question that somebody asked, can I get another PET scan? Because I want to see, have I reduced the plaque? Is there a quantifiable? I'm really into quantifying this because it's the only thing that I have, right? And he said, and it's one of the few things I actually agree with him on, don't do it because then if you're better, your insurance company may not pay. Right? So I was like, okay, I'm backed off, right? The only way to deal with that is to go to a clinical trial. And so clinical trials will be the next thing that I want to talk about. You had your hand up, sir.
Yeah, what infusion do you get?
It's called Leqembi. It was the first one approved. So when I got on Leqembi, the Lilly drug...
Aducanumab. Aducanumab? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, lecanemab, yep.
Aducanumab, the first one, and they took it off the market.
Okay, so the first one that is now on the market is lecanemab, and that one's the one that I take because the other one wasn't approved yet.
And I beat myself up all day long. Oh, I can't
Shouldn't do that.
Oh, I can't do this. I used to be able to remember that, and I messed this up.
Yeah. So another thing that Wendy and I came to the agreement on or understanding of was that we could not blame every mistake that I made in my life on Alzheimer's. I'm almost 62 years old, and I'm going to forget stuff. And I'm going to mess stuff up. I'm going to slip here and there and stuff. And not every time I forget my keys is, oh my God, the disease is getting worse. You can't live in that level of fear. And one of the very early things I came to in my own self-healing of my mental state was that I couldn't live in fear any longer. And I resolved that by starting to blog. And I write a post every week or 2 now. I detail my medical experiences, I detail my state of mind, I talk about politics, I talk a lot about music, because music is the thing that I love. And also I did a clinical trial that had me, this was out of the Northeastern University in Boston, that has me listening to music that is synced up to a light kit. And I go into a dark room and I put whatever music I want, and I'm like at a disco, where the lights flash in my face in time with the music, and I spend a half hour to an hour almost every morning doing this, and it has helped me. MIT has done a lot of research on the benefits of 40 hertz which is 40 flashes or beats per second, as a therapeutic thing. There's no FDA approval on any of this stuff, but I have a 40 hertz, a light that flashes at 40 hertz. That's 40 flashes per second. You can't even see it. But I put it on almost every night while I'm eating dinner or watching TV or whatever. It just flickers in the background. These are part of my healthcare routine. Are they the thing that is helping me? Again, I don't know. But something is, because I'm better than I was. I've also become an advocate and a speaker for the Alzheimer's Association. That's helped me. Getting out in front of people and telling my story and embracing my disease as opposed to hiding it. I think my observation of so many people who get diagnosed with Alzheimer's is that they bury their heads in the sand. They let that initial depression and crushing sense of loss become their life. And when we gave that up, Wendy and I, our lives got better for it. Better than they were prior. Because we said, all right, we're going to make this an opportunity. Because that's all we can do, right? The only problem with having the infusions is I can't travel as much. I have to be back in Springfield every 2 weeks. So, my son is getting married. He's getting married in Italy. He had to make sure, and I have to juggle my infusions so that I could go to his wedding. Well, we're going to be gone we're leaving the day after an infusion and getting back the day before. So, but I had to move things around to make that work. But it's easy. You're supposed to go every 2 weeks, but I bump it up a day and bump it up a day, and then soon you're on a different schedule and it works. But you have to be thoughtful about things like that. No, I can't go away that week because I have an infusion on Monday or whatever. The infusions are basically benign, except for the fact that you get a needle stuck in your arm. But I come out of them pretty tired. But if it's keeping me alive for 30% longer, it's well worth it. I wouldn't stop it for anything. And again, my insurance is paying what is the cost of this? Like it's $2,000 an infusion or $2,500 per infusion, the drug cost alone, not including the infusion cost. And I haven't even seen an EOB from them. It's just covered, which is pretty great. And I have non-expensive insurance. It was hard to get them because they insisted on some testing that didn't exist any longer, which was a struggle. But they said, when you get that test, we're going to cover it. And that made it impossible for me to get the coverage, but I got it. So two more last things I want to say because I know we're running behind schedule already. The first is, and this is really all about funding, is I'm in a clinical trial right now at Boston University. And this is a clinical trial that's looking at the effects of low voltage direct current stimulation on the brain for memory. Which means I go in and I get hooked up to EEG machines and they put electric shocks into my brain while I'm doing memory tests. Okay? This is one of the kind of alternate things that Megan was alluding to, that people are really trying to study how the brain works and what can be done to help it, right? So while I was in there, the researcher told me that funding was drying up for their trial. He said it's getting really hard to do these things because we're losing our funding. And then Megan hooked me up with another guy who's out of Harvard who's doing a different alternating current stimulation thing to be on his advisory board for getting this new trial up and running. They've lost their funding already. right? So it is the lobbying that the Alzheimer's Association does is to try to make sure that the government holds up their end of the bargain in funding things. Things are being cut because of programs like a clinical trial that was designed to look at the effects of certain things on women. And that trial was ended because DEI. Right? That's not okay, because that's actually good science. Alzheimer's affects, as Megan said, 30% more women than men. Of course you should have a study on that alone. It doesn't mean men aren't getting studied, for crying out loud. It just means that there's another thing going on. And so, supporting the Alzheimer's Association to continue to lobby in the government, and I just got back from Washington, D.C. a month ago, where we were actually speaking to our congresspeople about this, and a wonderful thing, is super important for people to do. And one can do that. You all got a Walk to End Alzheimer's flyer. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is happening in October in Holyoke. I have a team. It's called Team Al's Blog. If you want to donate to the Walk to End Alzheimer's and support my team directly, you can donate to Team Al's Blog. Your money's all going to go to the Alzheimer's Association, and you're going to be supporting the walk, and it's a really good cause. So, with that said, I have some business cards that have a link to my blog on them if anyone wants to read it. In my blog is the link to the donation page directly to my team. I'd be grateful to see even $5 from people. Every little penny counts. And I'm in competition with my wife too, who can raise more money. And so this is very important. Very important. I'm going to lose my mind, so do it now. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for coming and being interested and concerned. And I can answer some questions offline, so we can clear the room. But come and see me if you want a business card. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sean. That was great. Thank you for sharing your story. I think it really makes a difference. And thank you all for coming today. And yeah, feel free to ask us questions. Thank you.